In this video, we're going to talk about the unemployment update. We're going to talk about the Department of Labor's report, the initial claims rising, the unemployment rate, and how possibly this could affect your unemployment moving forward and your stimulus check. But before we do, if this is your first time at our channel or you haven't subscribed, click on the subscribe button at the bottom. My name is Travis Sickle, certified financial planner, helping you reach your financial goals. So really the second package that was rolled out for unemployment, the LWA, that additional assistance that was coming from FEMA with Trump's executive order, they're out of money. They're not issuing any more funds, even with some states not having cut their first check. But it will be retroactive for those states, and each state is handling it a little differently. But what really doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me, at this point, we have not heard that much on revamping unemployment as a whole. Because when you're looking at these weekly benefits, it's clear there's a ton of states, most of them, that can't really make it from week to week if you're living paycheck to paycheck. It's really just not enough. And I get the other side of it, where the benefits can't be 100%, because if they were, then that would somehow incentivize people to not go back to work. But even with a short gap on unemployment, which is really what it's intended for, should cover more than what it's covering around the country. And if you've seen anyone talk about revamping unemployment across the board, let me know in the comments down below, but I haven't seen it at this point. And all we've seen at this point is Congress arguing over the next stimulus package and what's gonna happen for the next round or extension of unemployment benefits. And Trump, through executive order, had to use FEMA funds in order to find a way to continue unemployment benefits. And from those original estimates that we ran on unemployment a few weeks ago, it looked like the executive order funds, the $44 billion, went about as far as we thought it was going to go, and it is out. Now, before we get into the numbers, look at the numbers with a grain of salt, because when you're looking at any of these numbers, especially the first one, and it's the unemployment numbers, the initial claims that we're still seeing, they're staggering numbers, but you have to put them in context and compare them to other information, other data, other numbers, just so you can really understand and grasp the magnitude of the situation and really how it's impacting the entire country. And that first number is the initial claims for unemployment at 870,000. And that is a huge number. And if we pull up the Department of Labor's report, and you can see I have it highlighted right there with the initial claims at 870,000, an increase of 4,000 from the previous week's revised level. And if you look at just that number, it makes you believe that unemployment might somehow be rising. Initial claims, 870,000 people who just signed up for unemployment for the first time. That's a lot of people, but you have to put it in context. So I want to look at total unemployment of a chart so you can see the trends. And here's that same unemployment initial claims, and that's at 870,000 right here. And taking it back 1 week, we could see that it's the 866,000, which is 4,000 less than last week. But you can see clearly the trend is decreasing on initial claims. And if we jump over to the unemployment rate of 8.4%, you could see that's also dropping. And that was at a high in April of 14.7%. So what this means is if the rate is dropping on total unemployment and the initial claims are at 870,000, that means the only way that number drops is if current people that are on unemployment, those currently unemployed, are higher than 870,000 going back into work. So this is good news and bad news. The good news is that more people are going back to work and they're off unemployment, but that's also bad news because the less people that are on unemployment puts less pressure on Congress to push the next stimulus package, to push additional unemployment benefits, and get those that are on unemployment additional assistance. Now, if you stop and think about this for a second, even with that rate decreasing, 870,000 people, if you lined them up and they stood 6 feet apart on a line for unemployment, that would span 5.2 million feet, which is 988 miles. That means last week, a line 988 miles long signed up for unemployment benefits. But you still have to look at numbers in context. Even though these are massively large numbers, the last year of August of 2019, there were 3.7% of people on unemployment. Today, there's 8.4%. August, those are August numbers, 8.4%. So that's a massive increase. But on the flip side, if you looked at the height of April, that was 14.7%. And now we're looking 4 months later, it's dropped to 8.4%. That's a 42% drop in unemployment. A positive trend, but when you're looking at it personally, on unemployment versus back to work, it's more of a black and white situation personally. For the government, these numbers, 8.4%, are on unemployment. But personally, either you have a job or you don't. Yeah, could you get part-time work? Could you get some sort of an income doing a side gig or something to figure it out? Yes. But for the vast majority, this is a black and white situation. Either you're 100% on unemployment or 100% employed for the most part. So from an individual standpoint, it's really a black and white situation and really a tough thing to look at when you're saying, okay, this is improving, but at the same instance, knowing that all of these people are still unemployed, a lot of people in the US live paycheck to paycheck. So this is basically cutting it off completely. There's no cash reserve to speak of that is going to get them through this. The average American has something like $400 to $500 in their bank account. So this is really, really difficult. And this will help also magnify how difficult it is. So this chart that I want to pull up right here is the US average weekly earnings is going up. So at first glance, you're like, wow, that's great. Weekly earnings are going up and they're currently at $1,019. And that's up sharply from pre-pandemic of March, which was $978. I know that doesn't seem like a lot, but that's a short time frame and quite a spike when you're looking at averages. And if we bring out this chart a little bit further, even to the 3-year chart, you could see that it spikes, but it doesn't spike necessarily for positive reasons. It spikes because who goes back to work? Is it the wage workers or is it management? Who's on unemployment for the most part? Who's the first to go? It's the wage workers. So that makes it even more difficult that the people that are on unemployment are the ones in the tightest of situations. So before I get into one last chart, what does this do for future unemployment? And what does this do for our next stimulus check? Well, Congress has been going back and forth and constantly saying that they're going to get it together. They have an agreement. They're working it out. And it does seem like they're getting more well thought out, especially since the Problem Solvers Caucus was really the first effort that sounded like somebody actually sat down and thought about this. That was really the first time that I felt like that with any of the proposals, rather than totally coming from one side or the other. It doesn't matter which side it's coming from, the other side wasn't going to agree to it. So the Problem Solvers Caucus looked like it was the best iteration, but they're still working on it. They're still trying to come to an agreement. But the less people that are on unemployment is going to affect their decision, because if they see things improving, then they might not roll it out, or they might roll out some stimulus package, but cut back on some other parts like unemployment or possibly the stimulus check. Because we have seen a few iterations where the stimulus check wasn't in the next stimulus package. And if we look to kind of what we see as this disconnect from what's going on in the country to the stock market, we can look at the unemployment to the S&P 500, basically the S&P 500's recovery. And this chart is showing us the unemployment rate, that's in blue, and the S&P 500 in orange. And it's really a leading indicator, the market. So you can see that it's down sharply here. What do we notice right after that? Unemployment's all the way up here. So it predicts, or not necessarily predicts, but it's called a leading indicator. I guess another better way to say this would be an expectation of what's going to occur. So we see that unemployment now is decreasing and the market's going up. So we see that basically in advance. And that's what we're seeing. Now we're seeing some gyrations here. Now this could be for a multitude of different things. It could be for the upcoming election. It could be from unemployment. It could just be from not the stimulus package not getting pushed through. And it's probably a lot of it's coming from the Fed's decision on how to control inflation with keeping rates low moving forward. But these are also metrics that the feds and the government and Congress and the president are all looking at to make their decisions. And for those that have retirement accounts and they're thinking about the stock market as a whole and feeling extremely uncertain, given also that it's an election year, if we look back at this chart and I show you the S&P 500, we see these dips, and this is not uncommon to see. And if we zoom out to the 10-year, it slowly dissipates. And as we go to a max chart, it slowly dissipates, and we can see that the trend here. It's the same trend that we've seen since the beginning of time. Yes, there are highs and there are lows, but if you're doing proper planning and figuring out what you need in the short term, even if you are nearing retirement, you can position yourself without taking massive swings and having to make terrible decisions of whether or not you should be in the market or not, because making those short-term reactions will get you in trouble. Now, again, I point this stuff out a lot, and I'm not making a recommendation of what you should do, whether you should be in the market or you should not be in the market, but you should look at your situation over the long haul rather than looking at a very short time frame. And that is your unemployment update. If you've enjoyed this video, be sure to subscribe and leave your comments down at the bottom.